Hey everybody, happy Sunday. It's funny because I try and I wake up Sunday morning, do some practicing, got lots of stuff going on for practice for the school, for concerts coming up, gigs coming up, gigs with new bands coming up, that kind of thing. Lots of stuff to practice. Cheers for the cold coffee people out there. Extremely cold. Um, anyways, I said, oh well, it's getting late. Better do my video for the week, and then don't have anything prepared except birthdays and that kind of thing. Oh, whose birthday is it? Who sadly who passed away? Any other news in rock and roll? So one of my favorite guitar players' birthday is on, I believe, November 6th. Still not doing the research. Paul Gilbert of Mr. Big, Racer X, first band, and just Paul Gilbert. His solo albums are so good, but most recognized for Mr. Big. Another thing is, I gotta play something, right? So Paul Gilbert's stuff is pretty intense, right? So I probably played one of the most simplest things that Paul Gilbert ever played was the beginning of this, and it wasn't even the beginning. I mean, the beginning I actually sat down and because I learned this part years ago that whole section, right? As you can see, it's not very practiced, so I went with I went with the easier part, the easier section. Anyways, sue me, okay? I mean, I'm not practicing this stuff. Anyhow, Paul Gilbert. Let's talk about Paul Gilbert for a second here. I didn't really get into playing fast or into the whole, how do you say, dynamic of what the pick is doing while the left hand is flying away. It's very easy to make your left hand get faster than your right hand, and Paul Gilbert kind of cleaned that up for me. Where back in the back in the day, I had to have been around 1988, 1989 maybe. There was these Starlix videos, and you guys remember these? They were great. They were all of a sudden these on VHS. All our favorite guitar players, shredders, Impellitteri, Yngwie, Paul Gilbert, a whole slew. Eric Johnson had one. A whole slew of Starlix, what they call Starlix videos or REH video. A bunch of companies started commandeering all these hot guitar players and doing these videos. And they started off really funny because they would say, hey, let's tune up, and then they would sit there and give you an E, give you a B, and it's like, it was just really funny that we didn't have readily available tuners back then, clip-on tuners like are commonplace now, but they would tune us up in the video. I thought that when I watch back all those videos, I think it's kind of funny. But yeah, Paul Gilbert had his Intense Rock 1. There's Intense Rock 2. I think there's Intense Rock 3. I actually bought Intense Rock 2. But Intense Rock 1 was floating around through a bunch of friends, and people were making copies that had tons of glitches on them, and I made my own copy. I got my copy from someone else, and sat there and played through all the Paul Gilbert, and there's a ton of exercises on that video, and it does make you better if you're doing everything right, and I just have to thank Paul Gilbert for making that video. It was lots of little comedy things in there too. It's kind of funny, but yeah, and he helped a lot of people, and a lot of my boys, watched that video a million times like I did. But yeah, the first guy plays who just ripped on guitar. Kind of a freak of nature. If you look at if he holds his hand up like this, his pinky is actually as tall as the ring finger, which I don't know if that helped him out with the stretches or whatever, or the speed, but my friend Gary from Manitoba, who lived in Toronto when I knew him, Gary watches this show. He said that all he heard was the metronome outside his door, yeah, at his dorm, because Gary went to GIT the same time Paul was there, and all you heard was a metronome, and Bill Gilbert said they made him a teacher at GIT. And he says it wasn't, and he's kidding around when he says it wasn't because it was playing, but they said it was more so because he always showed up early, so they always have a teacher that showed up on time and actually showed up, you know, because teachers sometimes don't show up. That's my world. Anyhow, but yeah, just incredible player. Played with Racer X, which was the shred team. And some of those guys, I mean, John Oliver, I can't remember his last, how to pronounce it. The bass player went on to do something, I can't remember what. Yeah, he was played in John Corabi's band, I believe. But the most famous guy, I guess, is Scott Travis and Judas Priest was the drummer for Racer X, and Paul Gilbert. Everybody went on to do something, but anyhow. Yeah, Paul Gilbert and then became, joined up with Mr. Big. I first saw Paul Gilbert. There was a article in Guitar Player magazine called Spotlight, where you would just make a tape, take a picture of yourself, hand it in. I don't know if you guys remember Spotlight column in Guitar Player, but a lot of incredible future guitar players were in this column, and Paul was one. Yngwie Malmsteen was in there. Vinnie Moore. Saw countless. Mark St. John or Mark, I can't remember all the different names. From Kiss, from who played on Animalize. Just an incredible bunch of players that you saw. Mike Varney was the guy's name from Shrapnel Records. And this is a guy who discovered, Cacophony, who had Marty Friedman and Jason Becker in that band, and then Paul Gilbert had Racer X was on that label and everything else. But yeah, just pioneering days for the shred guitar. I watch. Go watch if you guys are into all this stuff. Watch Yngwie's video or interview with Rick Beato, which came out a couple weeks ago. Not a very long one, not as long as Nuno's, which was 2 hours, but Yngwie. He makes an interesting point where violin, for classical guitar, there's the regimen or the discipline of classical guitar, nylon string. And then there's classical violin and cello and all that. And those techniques are hundreds of years old, for especially violin, cello, and piano. All the techniques for shred guitar and neoclassical guitar, which was a phrase coined when describing Yngwie, he said are very new. All these techniques are very new. We're just still coming up with a lot of fresh techniques. So we're still in a very, very pioneering stage. Imagine 100 years from now when people start talking about two-handed tapping and stuff like that. It would be that old and that many people doing it, but it's not that many people have done shred guitar or played like Yngwie. I mean, there's players out there, but he's probably the first guy to really bring that to the forefront. And interesting. And Paul Gilbert, another one who just brought shred picking to the forefront, and it's just something that we just are now discovering. There's a guy named Troy Grady on the internet for the last probably about 10 years now. It just really focuses in on the pick and the angles of the pick, and I teach that now with my students who want to play faster and stuff like that. The pick angling is very important. So cheers to Paul Gilbert. Mr. Big is now out on the final tour. Gotta love Billy Sheehan. Billy Sheehan is another incredible player from Buffalo, New York, who I used to see in the bars and Gasworks, and 20 Grand West was another bar, and especially Rock and Roll Heaven. Billy's a great guy. Amazing guy, very candid, and he actually answers his posts on Facebook. Like if I've talked to him many times on Facebook, and he's very gracious and cool enough to answer fans. Of course, once he answers, all those 300 fans say, "Oh, Billy, you're so great." No. Meanwhile, back off, people. Really, leave the guy alone. If he's gonna answer a post, just let him answer it and go. But someone said, "Hey, they did the final Mr. Big tour in Japan, and people were saying, 'Hey, why don't you come into the States? Why don't you come into my town?'" And then Billy just basically very candidly said, "Hey, something? We send the invitations out to different pockets of areas, and no one's biting on this. So guess what? We're probably not going to come to the States for our final tour." And I guess that news got around. So there are some dates in the States now for their final tour. Sadly, I don't think they'll be coming close to where I live. But yeah, the final tour for Mr. Big. Sadly, drummer Pat Torpey has passed away some years back, so he's not. So it's just the original three front guys, and I can't remember who's on drums. Matt Starr used to drum with him. I don't think he's with him on this tour, but it'd be great to see. I saw Mr. Big at Canada's Wonderland. They were opening for Winger. It was the Lean Into It tour. Apparently, they're doing Lean Into It from front to back, which is by far their best album. But I saw them. I was in line for the Mindbuster at Canada's Wonderland with my friend Brad, and Mr. Big just goes on for their sound check, and I sat there in the line at the Mindbuster, just riveted, listening to they did 4 songs for sound check. They did Daddy Brother, Lover Little Boy with the drill song, Alive and Kicking, Road to Ruin, I believe. I can't remember that. I remember there was 4 specific songs in it, and that just made my day hearing Mr. Big's sound check, standing in line to get on the roller coaster. That was just awesome. And then they came on and did the most killer set of just solid songs. Still got the guitar, bass, and drum solo in an opening set, and pretty much blew Winger off the stage. They were just so incredible. That was just a great day at Canada's Wonderland. You guys remember Canada's Wonderland? Kingswood Music Theatre in Canada's Wonderland. I saw so many bands there. Man, so many bands I saw. God, I can't even imagine. We'll talk about that some other time as I run out of time on my show. Anyways, Bridge on Fire is playing in Hamilton at the End Zone this Friday night. Come see us. Jacob D'Souza is playing at Taps in Niagara Falls on Saturday night, November 11th, the next night. I'm going to be a tired guy next weekend with all the rehearsals and all this stuff coming up. Lots of great stuff for Christmas coming up for Avalon Music Academy. Our concert is on December 10th. We're going to be taping our Christmas special coming up, which will air over Christmas. You don't want to hear about when we're doing it. Anyhow, have a great one, guys. Enjoy. Wakey, because it's daylight savings time, so don't look at, if you have an analog alarm clock, you better fix that. The microwaves, too, aren't tied in. Our phones just do away with daylight savings time, don't they? Anyhow, I'm rambling. See ya. Have a good one. Happy birthday, Paul.